They said over radio that I was dead. As you see, I am alive.
Makarios was most interested in his personal cult and enjoyment of power.
I am the president. I am the elected president.
He is the elected president of Cyprus. There is no other.
Will you ask Mr. Wilson if the British government can use force?
Not for the time being.
The most likely people to intervene are the Turkish government at the moment. Would you like to see them intervene if nobody else does?
I think that the Turkish intervention will create some more complications.
There is a grave situation in the Eastern Mediterranean, and I think that the prospects are going to deteriorate rather than get better.
They tried to kill me by attacking the presidential palace with mortars and other weapons. The palace was demolished in the attack. They thought that I was killed, and indeed they said over radio that I was dead. As you see, I am alive. I didn't want to fall into the hands of the Greek junta, and I preferred to leave Cyprus. I felt that going into hiding was not the answer. I considered that outside Cyprus I could be able to help my people more effectively in their struggle against the dictatorship, in their struggle for their democratic rights.
What do you want the British government and the Security Council to do?
To help the people of Cyprus to get rid of this Greek dictatorship.
With force if necessary?
For the time being, perhaps it will not be necessary to use force.
Are you ready to go back to Cyprus yourself?
I hope that I will be able to return back to Cyprus.
Will you ask Mr. Wilson if the British government can use force?
Not for the time being.
But it may become necessary, you think?
I hope that it will not become necessary.
The most likely people to intervene are the Turkish government at the moment. Would you like to see them intervene if nobody else does?
What I want to see is the withdrawal of the Greek officers from Cyprus.
But if it can only
because
be done by
they are
force,
responsible for all these troubles in Cyprus.
But if it can only be done by force and nobody else is willing, would you be happy to see the Turkish government do it?
I think that the Turkish intervention will create some more complications.
Still consider yourself president, you're saying?
I am the president. I am the elected president.
What were your thoughts about? Excuse me, sir. Sir, here, please. Sir, wait. Sir, can you wait, sir? Can you wait, sir? Come again. Thank you very much. One more way, gentlemen. Gentlemen, one more way.
Sağ olun.
The reason for the coup was the intolerable situation that prevailed in Cyprus prior to the coup. For the last couple of years, the Cypriot people lived under extreme provocation by Makarios' paramilitary forces and his newly formed police tactical reserve force. Those were not really organs of administering or helping to administer the country, but to suppress the opposition.
Do you think that this coup enjoys the support of most people in Cyprus? What percentage do you think?
Well, we certainly believe that within a very, very short time, the Cypriot people would come out clearly in the open, quite freely, to demonstrate their support for the new government.
Do you think Makarios could now make a comeback?
Makarios is really out of it now. He has written for 24 years without any real effort to try and solve the Cyprus problem. What he was most interested in was in his own personal cult and enjoyment of power. Had he had any chance of surviving, he would have stayed there. The people of Cyprus now feel that he has deserted them and fled the country at the time when he was asking them to fight all out to repel the coup.
How far was the Greek government involved in the coup?
I would have said the Greek government was overtaken by events. The Greek government was to decide of what was their reply to the Cyprus government and to Makarios about the removal of the Greek officers when this coup happened. And the fact that the Greek officers in Limassol and Paphos were held hostage until late last evening when they were freed by the National Guard quite clearly indicates the non-intervention and non-participation of the Greek government in the Cyprus issue. It was a case of EOKA-B starting an all-out fight against the Makarios regime. The National Guard comprises of 10,000 Cypriots, and another 30,000 Cypriots have been trained by the National Guard and finished their national service over the last 4 or 5 years, and those were the people who really fought and felt that they should fight to get rid of Makarios.
You said some quite unkind things about Archbishop Makarios, but surely Mr. Samson has an extremely unsavory record.
I did say some unkind, but they're not unkind if you go into the essence of the matter and look at Geoffrey Garrett's report of the International Commission of Jurists. Now, with Samson, he has participated in a fight against a foreign rule. He was a young man, felt a lot about his country, and participated in his country's war as all the British young men of the 1940s did for this country against the Germans. He did what he believed was right for his country, but that is of the past. I know that Samson doesn't dislike the British. Samson is a regular visitor to this country for personal reasons and for health reasons of his family, and in no way bears a grudge against the British at all. That is forgotten, and I think he would prove that he would be a good president, and as he said, it's only for a limited period of time until democratic elections are carried on in Cyprus.
Bound to be. Miracles of the electronic media.
You
Yes, it's ready.
Merci. En 10 secondes. Foreign Secretary, Turkish troops are massing only 40 miles from Cyprus. What is Britain doing to prevent a war in the Mediterranean?
At the moment, we're taking as much diplomatic action as is possible. I've had several discussions today with the Turks, with the Americans. We've been in touch with NATO. All these discussions are going on.
But can diplomatic action prevent a war?
Oh, yes, of course it can. If the will is there to find a peaceful solution, then we can prevent a war. What I have the job of doing is trying to bring together the differing elements in this situation at the present time.
But the Turks are very bellicose at the moment. They're very worried about their own nationals in Cyprus. They're anxious to intervene and do something about it. Can this be prevented?
They have put some proposals to me, which I must examine and try to see if I can get others to agree to them too. If it's possible to get agreement on a concrete package, then it will be possible to avoid an outbreak of hostilities.
Well, what is the concrete package?
Well, that is something I think I must discuss with the other elements in the dispute at the present time. Of course, all this arises because President Makarios has been wrongfully ejected from the island, and there is no doubt that the Greeks do bear a heavy responsibility for this. It was their own officers, officer of the National Guard, who have precipitated this situation, and they could certainly help to reduce tension if those officers were taken out of Cyprus, either withdrawn immediately, or certainly in an agreed phased withdrawal.
Now, the British government has asked for those officers to be withdrawn.
Yes.
What happens if they're not withdrawn?
Well, that is a case where we shall just have to go on discussing this, if possible, and see if we can get an agreed package.
The British government have committed themselves to supporting Archbishop Makarios. Now, how can you put him back in power without the use of force?
Well, you could if there was agreement that he should go back without the use of force, obviously. And it wouldn't be very sensible to put him back by using force if it was against the will of the people. But let us remember, he is the elected president of Cyprus. There is no other. The man who has replaced him has been replaced as a result of intervention largely from outside by the Greeks. So that it is right that we should stand by the rule of law in this particular connection and assert that President Makarios is the legitimate authority of the island.
Was President Makarios such a good president that we have to support him? After all, he didn't entirely support the Constitution as laid down in 1960, and which we supported.
The Constitution has not been worked completely, but if you ask whether it is better to have a president who has been elected by the people, who hasn't strictly observed the Constitution, or one who seizes power, with the aid of an outside force, there can surely be no answer to that. But the real point, I think, is to stick to the Constitution as far as it can be worked. And the constitutional president is President Makarios. If, for any reason, let us assume he had been killed, then certainly it isn't Mr. Samson who takes his place. It would be the Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Kyriakos, so that the Constitution has been utterly broken in Cyprus by what has happened.
If Nikos Samson is not removed, there's likely to be a civil war in Cyprus which will make the IRA campaign in Northern Ireland look like peanuts. Isn't this a factor in your reckoning, that this is going to be a sort of festering sore in the Mediterranean, which somehow has got to be stopped?
Yes, indeed. That is why I'm literally have spent all today on it and all of yesterday, and I'm ready to spend as much time as is necessary to try to prevent this. You compare it with Northern Ireland, of course there are very substantial differences, but you have got two communities living in a very confined space, but with two very powerful outside neighbours. The Turks are disturbed because they believe that as a result of the intrusion of the Greek National Guard officers, that the balance between the two communities has been upset. They're anxious to see the balance restored and their own citizens, their own Turkish Cypriots, looked after properly, and that they should have access to them. These are the elements in the dispute. They can only be solved if there is a return to constitutional processes.
The Turkish Prime Minister went home today saying that we had 24 hours to sort it out. obviously suggesting that there would be armed intervention from Turkey. Does this worry you?
Yes, very much. If that is what he said, I hadn't seen that he said he had 24 hours. I wasn't given exactly that impression, but certainly I think there is a grave situation in the Eastern Mediterranean. At the moment, I would think that the prospects are going to deteriorate rather than get better.
Do you see any circumstances, Foreign Secretary, in which British troops will have to intervene in this problem? Not yet. We're still at the diplomatic stage. And it is diplomacy which is the best way. As Winston Churchill once said, jaw is better than war. And we're at the jaw stage now, and I'm ready to go on talking. But how long can jaw go on with Turkish troops massing and obviously ready for invasion? As long as they don't launch themselves across the channel to Cyprus. I have done my best to dissuade the Turkish government from any precipitate action, even though they may think they have been provoked by what has taken place in Cyprus this week. And we have also to make very energetic representations to the Greek government, which have been made and will continue to be made. At the moment, the Turkish government won't sit down with the Greek government and won't talk to it because they feel that the Greek government are the aggressors in this particular matter. I have had very long conversations with the Turkish government, but not so far with the Greeks. Are we taking sides, Foreign Secretary? No, what we have is a responsibility as one of the three guarantors of the treaty. And there was a treaty which said that Greece, Turkey and Britain should safeguard the constitution of the island. Well, our responsibilities fall under that treaty. And it is my job, as far as I can see, to try to bring those who are in dispute together in order to save lives in the island. Foreign Secretary, thank you very much. Thank you.
Before my departure, I like to say that I am fully satisfied with the talks I have had with the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State. I have found a great degree of understanding on their behalf, and I have full appreciation of the attitude of the British government on the situation in Cyprus. Particularly, I appreciate their assurance that in no circumstances they are going to recognize the so-called new regime imposed by the junta of Greece upon the people of Cyprus.